Howdy, everybody. I'm Thomas Blair.
I'm Mark Halash.
And this is the 2017 October Ace Q&A. As we do every October, we retire the card from the previous year. And it turns into...
an Origami Dragon.
Wow. All right. We have a new card. He's purple.
Very epically purple.
Oh, yeah. Let's go to the questions. Will every class be able to have at least 2 power trays?
Yes.
I think so. Every class does have 2 power trays.
Two's a good start.
Everybody has a survival tray and at least 1 other tray. How will the druid's life-death trays be handled in this new environment? Will they get access to a 3rd tray?
Most assuredly.
Yes. Everyone gets the survival tray. There you go. And life is 1 tray and death is the other tray. Assuming the cleric's left mouse button makes his default tray ranged, will the cleric have an option to also have a melee tray?
Probably not anytime soon. They're a range class out of the box, more or less. So
yeah, I just did all the work last week to make sure everything was set up in the range. So all of their bonuses are ranged and all of their stuff is ranged.
They are ranged for days.
They are ranged. However, they can use their hammer left click at point blank range. It has no minimum range. So there you go. Next question. Okay, so this question has to do with basically large scale battles. He's defining them as 100 on 100. And over this last weekend after one of our hot fixes, there was a lot of lag. And it could have been server lag, could have been client lag, and what's going on. And basically every time we put something new in, we have a potential to make things worse. Right. I mean, that's the way MMOs are. They're just so big.
Yeah, I mean, everything touches everything else, so you never know what interactions you're going to get till you get out there and see what happens. Right?
Yeah, so when you want to stop putting bugs in is also the same time that you stop putting new stuff in the game. Right, and we're not ready to do that yet. So there's going to be weekends where some weekends we actually do make it worse. Yeah. We generally try not to do that. We optimize out as much as we can, but you got to put new stuff in and then optimize it down. So this is more of a comment kind of thing. I'll post thoughts when I get time later on the new skill training. Great job. There needs to be a moving cap on skill training post-launch to prevent the use of tomes from alt accounts to power level a single main account beyond what a regular VIP account could attain mathematically. And we are certainly looking at that. The diminishing returns when you use a tome on an account certainly covers some of that, but if it becomes a problem, and when we actually implement the tome stuff, because right now we just did kind of some of the early back-end work, so it's not a problem to actually finish it out when we need this post-launch. Because again, the whole tome and transferring stuff is a post-launch feature. The word respec was mentioned on stream, but it looked like it was missed when the chat erupted over the tomes. Can we get some ideas on your thoughts for respecing?
I mean, we're not against it, but I mean, I think we need to do this portion of it first, and then we'll evaluate after that. So.
Right, again, that's kind of a post-launch thing.
Right, I mean, nothing's stopping us from doing it, and if it's a popular request, we probably will.
And now we have the bank to put things into, so it could easily be wiping out a tree and just putting that all in the bank. Right. Since we're enabling you basically to spend from that skill tree's bank. But again, post-launch feature, not going to worry about it too much now. We're just laying the groundwork for it right now. Okay. Series of 5 questions. In 4 parts each. Ready, Mark?
Sure. Let's do it.
Will the ability to double dip within professional skill trees be prevented?
I would say yes.
Yes,
yeah, I mean,
you are correct. Lightning round.
Yeah.
Will the ability to double dip within the class race skill trees be prevented?
Sure.
You can only train in 1 skill tree within a sphere at a time. Do you plan on adding specific class trees to the skill system, so we'll get back to the individual Confessor, Templar, Myrmidon training we've come to enjoy?
Not at release. Not
at release, and again, if you look at how deep the skill trees are, you're looking at well over a year and a half before you would even make it to that phase. So again, we have time, and that gives us content to put in in the future. Right. Do you plan on putting a cap on the training tomes to prevent a character from using tomes to exceed maximum training when compared to a non-VA? Again, tome stuff, we're putting in the back end for it, a way that you could actually use it and create them. The rules around it, we'll worry about that post-launch when we actually need these things as the catch-up feature that they're intended to be. Please give us win conditions that we can work towards over the entire course of the campaign, not just have a final battle for it in the last window before the campaign world ends. So, So yes, right now, and this is something I've seen on the forums as a trend, people are taking what we have up there for testing, the 5-minute timers, the 10-minute timers, as how it's going to be. No, we want to catch all the bugs. That's why the timers are the way they are. When those timers are 72 hours and multiple days, like when a siege ends, you can't take that fort over, it goes into cooldown for a period of at least 24 hours. So if you look at it right now, yeah, it's easy to run around the map and take everything.
5 minutes isn't enough. Isn't a lot of time to enjoy the spoils of your victory.
Right.
Right, before you can get attacked again. So
the way it is right now is just so we can make sure it works. Not so you can run around out there and treat it like it's going to be at launch. So we will get those final values in, but if we were to do it now, you guys wouldn't actually, like, would they even be able to get to a siege? Like, if we were to put in the real values for building walls and the real values for all of this stuff, it would take some time on your end.
Right. We want to make sure it works end to end, so that's why everything's very abbreviated and shortened and streamlined for that purpose.
Yes. So we will put the times when we're happy that everything is not breaking, which I don't think too many things are that broken right now. So, all right, moving on. How close are we to be able to switch vessels and keep all of our disc runes and store the original vessel? I'm hoping that with some of the things coming out in 5.4-ish range, definitely not 5.3, but 5.4-ish, that we actually have the vessels as a thing, and they're an inventory object, and they do all kinds of things.
So short answer is not for 5.3.
Correct. Yeah, 5.3, as a kind of a 30,000 foot view, is the race class split. There's
skill
stuff, the new action harvesting, cleaning up a bunch of the inventory things, as well as
280,000 bug fixes for powers.
280,000. That was a lot of bug fixes. The new racial disciplines. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in there. Everything isn't in there. Just a lot of things. All right, moving on. Do you keep a list of everything you want to be in by soft launch and check off things as they're completed? What about a roadmap that shows things like 5.2 equals siege, 5.3 equals race class, 5.4 equals blah?
I mean, there's certainly a production schedule, and the producers are checking boxes as we do things.
Yeah, and there's definitely a schedule. Do we share it? No, because we don't want our feet held to the fire for every little thing that we have to rearrange. Because for us, it's kind of a living document. Some things have to slip around, and you're like, oh, hey, this thing that we planned to do 2 milestones out just became super easy, or we had to do it anyways to get to the thing we wanted to do. And that happens all the time. So we get pretty transparent after we do a thing and when it's at a very high level, but we're not going to give you, here's our schedule, hold us to these dates. Right. Treasure hunting and exploration. Ooh, this is a fun one. Cartography and digging with shovels equals treasure hunting. It's practically done already.
Practically done.
Just add a skill tree. So, yes, we have the pieces, but being practically done?
Well, I mean, depends on who you talk to.
I love the idea.
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
I mean, and it will be fun when we get stuff like that in. Because, again, you're right, the exploration tree is where fun things like that, gameplay elements like that go, that are outside of combat and they're outside of crafting. So that is where we would put it. But it's not quite practically done. But I like that phrase. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, particle effects. I recently shared a video where I made a push into a fort lodge full of enemies with some guildmates, and their overwhelming response was how difficult it was to see with all the particle effects. I currently don't see a particle effect slider or an option to turn them on or off altogether. Is that an option we may see in the future?
I would think so.
I would think so as well. But that is kind of a more of an end feature, not a really core initial feature that we need to get on. Why are harvesting tools capped at 100 damage, Mark?
Why are they capped at 100 damage? Well, 100 is an easy number to work with, to be honest. I mean, that's really why they do 100 damage, right? And the other thing...
The nodes have 1,000 health.
They have 1,000 health, right? So 100 is an easy number to work with, A. B, there isn't any damage variance, so you always do 100 to 100. So it's not like they're capped at 100, it's just they do 100, right? We didn't want these doing 90 to 110 because we wanted to make sure that things were working exactly as they had, wanted them to work.
Now, they are going to start seeing variance as the nodes gain armor.
Right.
Because that 100 value gets reduced, and then their tool fights against that value, so that will create some variance. Right. And I've already put more variance in the basic one just to make it feel a little better. But yeah, your mining or logging stat will increase the amount of reduction that you do to it, which will increase your damage, and the armor of the node will reduce that damage. And team or the group ones are all working as well under the new system, so that's pretty exciting too. It was said previously, not on this stream, that Stealth Burrow will become its own tray, and that Dualist will no longer have to slot the Burrow ability. It's already like that in 5.3. How will Dualist re-burrow? Will you only be able to enter the burrow tray from the survival tray?
Correct. Well, exception being, of course, vanish will still put you directly back into the stealth tray.
And it will flip the tray for you.
And it will flip the tray for you. But generally, you will have to go back to the harvest tray to enter the burrow.
That is absolutely correct.
Which is pretty much what you were doing in the old system.
Yeah, you couldn't go from any combat stance into a stealth stance.
Right, we just prevented that from happening.
And in fact, the little widget that shows you your available skill trays, it will be grayed out if you're not in the survival tray. So it should be very apparent. And that's one of the reasons that we put them in the tray originally, was we didn't have a way to show you with the old system, the toggle system, we didn't have a way to show you why you could or could not do something. So it would always seem like it was broken if we'd set it up that way for you to trying to go into stealth and you were in combat. So now, with the new trays that we did, and everyone has all the trays, it totally makes sense. You're like, oh, that's grayed out, I can't use it. And it's no longer a power in my tray, which allows you to slot more things in there. So, moving on. Left mouse button attacks will be based on the weapon slotted. How will this work with the Duelist Master of Pistols, which grants a new left mouse button ability? Would you slot the pistol as your main hand and rapier as the offhand? How will this work? That is a really good question.
Right, I believe we were talking about this the other day, and the answer is we don't know yet. No,
yeah, we're still working on it. I just converted over all of the bows, the new bows that there's the compound bow, the recurve bow, the reflex bow, and the arcane longbow.
Reflex.
Yes. So all of those disciplines give you access to a new bow. And the woodcrafters get 3 new bows to make, and that determines your left click. So, we need to figure out what to do with the Duelist, and that's in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully before we get to test. We'll see. It sounds like the answer to siege weapons is that the harvesting tools will now be used to damage trees, walls, and the Banewood trees. Basically all the trees of life and Banewood trees. Is it your intention that we have out-of-combat subject to dizzy down to attack siege targets? Yes, it is. Which means that you have to have that area secured and risk going into a state that puts you vulnerable to do mega damage to trees of life and or walls. Assassins will get up to 4 trays, melee, stealth, survival, and ranged, if they take a bow discipline. While other classes such as Templar and the Cleric will only get 2 trays, survival and melee. How do you balance around this? How do we balance around this, Mark?
There's a couple different things we can do. First of all, it's always good to not design for things that don't exist yet, right? So part of this is we're going to see what happens, A. B, there are a lot of things we can do, like adding, basically putting things in cooldown groups so that if there's an advantage, like for, I can slot my buffs in here and that basically using my bow as just an ersatz buff slot. Right, there's things that we can do to link cooldowns so that we could put buffs on cooldown. We can say if you use put reductions on basically your ability to use abilities and stuff like that.
That was a good SAT word, by the way.
What?
Ersatz buffs.
Ersatz, yes.
And so what Mark meant is basically you put nothing but buffs on your range tray. You never have any intention of using the range tray. You just cycle over there to fire off those buffs and then cycle back to the melee tray.
Right.
And if it becomes a problem, we'll look at it at that time. All right. There you go. All right. Bow discs. When might we see the bow disciplines? Will these be included in 5.3? The original design, including Legionnaire, does that mean the Cleric will be able to use them? The Cleric is not able to use any of the bow disciplines. And you will, as I mentioned earlier in this video, there are new types of bows. They are linked to the left-click attacks that come with those bows, and they are pretty much operational. I think we were just waiting for some movement animations for the newer races for all of the new bow stuff. So, Getting closer, yeah, and you should see it in 5.3. I'm hoping. Okay, thanks for coming out for the October version of the Q&A.
And we'll see you next week at the live streams.